Amina balanced a tray of bananas carefully on her head as she weaved through the busy streets of Lagos. The afternoon sun beat mercilessly on her skin, but she kept going, her determination pushing her forward. She was just 16, with soft brown skin, bright intelligent eyes, and a quiet beauty that turned heads even when she was unaware. Every step she took was a step towards her dream to finish her secondary school education. Her father had passed away 2 years ago, and since then, her mother had struggled to keep the family afloat. Amina had taken it upon herself to hawk bananas after school, saving every naira she could for her school fees and textbooks. But life in the city wasn't kind to girls like her. Her mornings started before the first rooster crowed. She would sweep the compound, fetch water from the distant borehole, and prepare breakfast for her younger siblings. Her mother, Mama Rashida, worked as a cleaner in a small restaurant, often leaving home before dawn and returning well into the night. Amina had learned early how to juggle responsibility with the weight of her dreams. Every day after school, she would carefully stack ripe bananas on her old wooden tray, balance it on her head, and step into the labyrinth of Lagos traffic, calling out to passers-by in her soft, persuasive voice. Sometimes people bought out of pity, other times out of genuine need. But many simply ignored her, brushing past as if she were invisible. There were days when she returned home with unsold bananas and a heavy heart, knowing the money was desperately needed. Yet, she never gave up. The dream of sitting in a university lecture hall, of wearing a graduation gown and making her late father proud, kept her going. On the days when her feet ached and the sun burned her scalp, she would look up at the tall buildings and whisper to herself, "One day, I will not walk these streets. One day, I will own my own shop, and I will not be invisible." Her teachers at school admired her determination, though they knew her chances were slim. Many girls in her situation either dropped out, got married early, or worse, fell into dangerous traps the city often laid for desperate souls. But Amina was different. She carried herself with quiet dignity and resilience, never allowing her circumstances to define her worth. As she moved through the crowd that afternoon, she didn't know that her life was about to change, that the son of one of Lagos's most powerful men would cross her path. She only knew that she needed to sell every last banana on her tray. On a particularly hot Wednesday, Amina set out to her usual spot near the marina, where the rich parked their flashy cars and sipped cold drinks under shaded terraces. She knew the crowd there had money, and if luck smiled on her, she could sell out quickly. As she walked past the gleaming cars, a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. A young man stepped out, tall, well-built, and dressed in crisp designer clothes. His wristwatch alone could pay Amina's school fees for 3 years. His name was Brian Okafor, the only son of a well-known billionaire businessman. Their eyes met briefly. Brian, who was used to polished, pretentious people, was struck by her natural beauty and the innocence in her eyes. Amina quickly looked away and called out to a passerby to buy bananas. "Wait," Brian said, approaching her. "How much for the whole tray?" Amina blinked in surprise. "The whole tray? It's 5,000 naira, sir." Without a second thought, Brian handed her 10,000. "Keep the change," Amina stammered. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." She turned to leave, but something about her lingered in Brian's mind. "What's your name?" "Amina." And with that, she disappeared into the crowd. Brian found himself thinking about Amina long after their encounter. She was different, humble, hardworking, and real. Unlike the girls from his social circle who were after his father's money, Amina had an authenticity that drew him in. Days passed, and he made it a point to return to the same spot, hoping to see her again. When he finally did, he approached her like an old friend. "I was hoping I'd see you again," he said with a warm smile. Amina was shy but polite. Brian started buying bananas from her regularly, and soon, their conversations stretched beyond brief exchanges. She told him about her dreams, her struggles, and how she desperately wanted to finish school. Brian was touched. Unknown to Amina, Brian began looking for ways to help her discreetly. He spoke to his father, who was initially against his son's growing interest in a street hawker. But Brian was persistent. "I'm not asking you to approve. I just want to help her," he argued. His father eventually agreed to sponsor Amina's education anonymously, on the condition that Brian would stay away from her romantically. He didn't want his son entangled with someone of lower class. Brian reluctantly agreed, but his heart told a different story. Amina was called to the school principal's office one day, where she was informed that a mysterious benefactor had paid her fees in full up to university level. Tears filled her eyes. Who did this for me? But no one would tell. She suspected Brian, but whenever she asked, he would simply shrug and say, "Maybe someone who believes in you." Their friendship deepened. Brian would sneak away from his father's corporate meetings to spend time with her, buying bananas together, walking through the markets, and sharing stories. But the gap between their worlds loomed large. Over time, their bond turned into love. Brian confessed his feelings, despite knowing his father would never approve. Amina, torn between gratitude and her growing affection, struggled to accept what her heart wanted. "You're a billionaire's son. I sell bananas on the street. Your family will never accept me," she said, tears brimming. "Let me worry about my family," Brian replied. "I just know I don't want to lose you." His father, upon discovering their relationship, was furious and gave Brian an ultimatum: break up with Amina or lose his inheritance. Brian chose love. He walked away from wealth, privilege, and the comfort of his father's empire. He started working with a small logistics company, using his knowledge to build something of his own. With Brian's support, Amina completed her education, and years later, they opened a foundation to support underprivileged girls with dreams like hers. Their story became one of the most talked about in Lagos: a billionaire's son and a banana hawker who defied class, wealth, and society to build a life together. It all started with a simple act of hawking on the street, but it blossomed into a love that proved some dreams are too powerful to be broken by circumstance.